History of the Akkadian Empire. Baghdad, Iraq, has been marked by numerous conflicts in recent decades, dictatorships, foreign invasions, and civil wars, all leaving profound scars on this landscape. Inhabited by around 8 million people, despite being the fourth largest city in the Middle East today, Baghdad is not the first prominent city to dominate the southern Mesopotamian plains. Journeying southeast from the bustling city, one encounters vast earth mounds lining the horizon, a testament to ancient civilizations that once thrived here. Between Baghdad and the Persian Gulf, southwest of the town of Nazari, stands one of the most impressive mounds. Millennia ago, the Euphrates River flowed nearby, nurturing a flourishing civilization whose traces now lie buried beneath rubble, dirt, and bones. Abandoned by the river over 2,000 years ago, wind and time have shrouded these sites, preserving their silent testament to bygone eras. In the mid-19th century, strange artifacts from these mounds began appearing in nearby markets, sparking a revolution in archaeology. Through the meticulous efforts of horologists and scholars studying ancient climates through artifacts, the deciphering of ancient scripts on these items provided an unprecedented window into the distant past. Among these mounds, one stood out: Ur, mentioned in the Bible as the birthplace of Abraham, progenitor of 3 major world religions. Ur captivated early archaeologists who focused initially on collecting tablets and artifacts for study elsewhere. By 1920, a shift towards more rigorous scientific methodologies spurred the first comprehensive investigation of Ur itself. Leading this ambitious mission was Leonard Woolley, who had apprenticed under Arthur Evans, renowned for discovering Knossos in Crete. Woolley's team included Max Mallowan and Agatha Christie, later renowned for her literary works inspired by their archaeological expeditions. Woolley's excavations at Ur confirmed its status as a significant center of Sumerian culture during the early Bronze Age. Over 14 years of digging, evidence revealed continuous human occupation from approximately 5000 to 500 BC. At its zenith, Ur boasted a population of about 65,000, rivaling the largest cities of its time. While early European excavations initially sought origins of the Hebrew Bible, the discoveries at Ur expanded understanding beyond biblical narratives, unveiling a sophisticated Sumerian civilization. Among the finds were elaborate graves of citizens, kings, and queens, showcasing a culture comparable in antiquity and cultural richness to Egypt. Thousands of graves unearthed at Ur contained a wealth of objects reflecting trade connections spanning across the ancient world. Notably, a royal cemetery dating back to the 3rd millennium BC yielded a treasure trove of precious materials: gold, lapis lazuli, carnelian, bronze, and silver, alongside finely crafted items and musical instruments. The excavation of Ur provided unparalleled insights into ancient Mesopotamian society, shedding light on its wealth, hierarchy, and cultural achievements. Woolley's discoveries, including the opulent grave goods of Queen Puabi, vividly illustrated the splendor and sophistication of Ur's rulers and its role in shaping early urban civilizations. More recently, the renowned Lawrence of Arabia joined Leonard Woolley's team, along with Max Mallowan and his future wife Agatha Christie, who later penned a book inspired by their journey. This expedition became one of the most celebrated in archaeology, unearthing treasures comparable to the famed Tutankhamun's tomb. Leonard Woolley swiftly confirmed Ur as a major hub of Sumerian culture during the early Bronze Age. While European endeavors in the Middle East initially aimed to trace the origins of the Hebrew Bible, they revolutionized the understanding of the Sumerian world. Elaborate graves of citizens, kings, and queens emerged, showcasing a culture rivaling Egypt in antiquity and significance. Countless graves yielded a wealth of artifacts connecting Ur to distant lands across the ancient world. A particularly spectacular find was a royal cemetery from the mid-3rd millennium BC, yielding gold, lapis lazuli, carnelian, bronze, silver, and other semi-precious stones, alongside finely crafted items and musical instruments. These discoveries unlocked a world predating biblical narratives, illustrating the zenith of Sumerian civilization. Woolley and his successors meticulously documented ancient wealth and privilege, exemplified by Queen Puabi, whose grave goods remain on display today. Ur was not isolated, it was part of a dazzling array of city-states. In just over a millennium, the Sumerians pioneered humanity's first true urban centers, surrounded by towering walls and religious sanctuaries known as ziggurats, the skyscrapers of their era. Despite their harsh environment, lacking natural resources, Sumerians innovated farming and irrigation, leading to surplus grain and increased food supplies. This surplus allowed many to pursue intellectual pursuits, advancing mathematics and science. Among the Sumerians' enduring legacies is their invention of writing, initially for administrative purposes and later to record their history. These innovations laid the groundwork for powerful and wealthy city-states within a few centuries of Queen Puabi's reign. However, by the 24th century BC, this prosperity waned. Early civilization proved elitist. Few enjoyed the splendors of urban life, with most laboring outside its benefits. Ur's excavation illuminated a sophisticated society, where wealth and knowledge flourished amidst challenges. The Sumerians' urban achievements and cultural innovations set a precedent for subsequent civilizations, shaping our understanding of ancient history and human development. Around 2400 BC marked a pivotal moment in ancient Sumerian history when societal tensions reached a critical juncture. Texts unearthed from city-states like Ash reveal a stark divide. The wealthy, largely from hereditary priestly ranks, starkly contrasted with the impoverished common folk, many burdened by insurmountable debts. Desperate measures, such as selling children into slavery to settle debts, were tragically common, though not extensively documented. Similar conditions likely plagued other city-states as well. Sometime between 2350 and 2340 BC, scholars debate the precise date a new type of ruler ascended in the city-state of Umma, overshadowing its rival, Lagash. Umma's great competitor, had engaged in centuries of armed conflicts with Lagash, usually emerging victorious. Motivated by vengeance or strategic ambition, this new ruler launched a brutal assault on Lagash, reportedly massacring its people and desecrating its sacred temples. Subsequently, he extended his conquest to annex other city-states, proclaiming dominion over a vast territory from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. While King Lugalzagasi claims to have established an empire, most scholars doubt the extent of his conquests. Though ambitious, Lugalzagasi likely only controlled the Sumerian city-states, a notable feat nonetheless. Yet, the honor of creating history's first recognized world empire ultimately went to a figure of northern origins, far from Sumer's plains. Hailing from a land also mentioned in biblical narratives, this ruler, originally known by an obscure birth name, adopted the title Sargon, meaning legitimate king. Sargon rose to become the inaugural king of the Akkadian Empire, widely regarded as a pivotal shift in history. Within a few centuries, the Sumerians faded into obscurity, overshadowed by the Akkadian Empire's prominence, which endured for 2,000 years, shaping the subsequent civilizations of the region. This transition marked a transformative epoch in the ancient Near East. Throughout history, exceptional leaders have emerged, reshaping their worlds forever. From Cyrus the Great of Persia in the 6th century BC to Alexander of the Greeks and Julius Caesar centuries later, antiquity abounds with such figures. Over 1,000 years before, in the 24th century BC, the first of these titans arose, Sargon of Akkad. He would become the most formidable ruler of his era, inspiring countless rulers across ancient Mesopotamia and beyond to emulate his governance style and administrative prowess. Regarded posthumously as the epitome of kingship, much like Charlemagne and King Arthur, in later centuries Sargon's life blends myth, history, and legend. Due to the vast temporal gap since his reign, our knowledge of Sargon largely stems from Babylonian texts and inscriptions. These writings, considered more mythical than historical, are copies of earlier records believed to have originated closer to Sargon's time. They represent some of the earliest historical accounts compiled during the Age of Hammurabi, renowned for his famous law code in the Old Babylonian period. Most of these texts are copies of royal inscriptions, purportedly once engraved on monuments dating back 5 centuries prior to the discovery of a few original relics in Elam by French archaeologists in the 12th century BC. One of the more intact copies, traced back to Hammurabi's era, potentially commissioned by Sargon himself, traces the ruler's humble origins. According to this account, Sargon claimed descent from a priestess and an unknown father. Allegedly abandoned as an infant, he was placed in a covered reed basket and set adrift on a river. Fate led him to be found by a water drawer named Aki, who raised him as his own son. This narrative intriguingly parallels the early biography of Moses recounted in the Hebrew Bible. Sargon's legacy as a transformative leader rests not only on his conquests and administrative innovations, but also on the enduring tales woven around his life. Despite the ambiguity surrounding his early years, the influence of his reign reverberated across ancient Near East, setting benchmarks for future rulers and shaping Mesopotamian civilization. Adding to the flood myth and Garden of Eden concepts, which also find their origins with the Sumerians, another document known as the Sumerian King List, compiled centuries after Sargon's death, emphasizes his humble origins by claiming him to be the son of a gardener. Early in his career, Sargon purportedly served as the cupbearer to a man named Zababa, ruler of Kish, a significant northern Sumerian city positioned upstream from the major southern strongholds during a period of intense river management. Historically, Kish wielded some control over water flow, occasionally using it to influence lower cities. Unlike his leader Zababa, Sargon hailed from Akkad, an eastern Semitic-speaking region north of Sumer. Little is known about the Akkadians before Sargon's time, but scholars suggest they coexisted with Sumerians, influenced by their culture and religion across many shared cities. Sumer itself remains steeped in mystery, with its origins and language's roots unclear, though fully developed by the 4th millennium BC at monumental centers like Uruk and Eridu, the latter being, according to Sumerian mythology, where man was first created by the gods from mud. The Akkadians' origins are traced to the second phase of urbanization around the mid-3rd millennium BC, emerging in Syria and northern Mesopotamia at cities such as Ebla. They interacted with nomadic cultures like the Canaanites and Amorites on the fringes of Sumerian influence. By Sargon's time, the Akkadians worshipped Sumerian gods and shared a similar way of life, despite their different linguistic roots, possibly originating from mountainous or desert regions. Credited with founding a new city, Agade, near Kish, Sargon established its existence firmly in records from the 3rd millennium BC onwards. Though its precise location near Susa in the southern Sumerian plains remains undiscovered, despite its lack of agricultural potential, Agade strategically connected disparate peoples and cultures across Mesopotamia. Sargon and his descendants integrated Akkadian culture into their realm, shaping the course of ancient Mesopotamian history. His legacy as a transformative figure, blending myth and historical fact, resonates through the annals of ancient civilization. Expanding the horizons of Mesopotamia significantly, Sargon's legacy remains enigmatic, with scant archaeological evidence directly linking him to the founding of his city. Nevertheless, historical accounts suggest he ruled for an unusually long period, cementing a cult of personality that overshadowed his predecessors and successors alike. While credited with pioneering innovations such as the first standing army and forming one of the earliest known empires, it's debated whether these achievements were truly his firsts. In reality, Sargon likely inherited and built upon existing concepts of kingship that had evolved from the age of local chieftains and warlords, ruling through personal charisma rather than divine mandate. His rise to power was facilitated by political turmoil in southern Mesopotamia, particularly the ascension of Lugal-Zagassi, who consolidated authority from the lower sea to the upper and subjugated numerous city-states, including Kish. Amidst this militaristic climate, Sargon saw an opportunity to assert his authority. Following Lugalzagasi's capture of Kish, Sargon swiftly mobilized his loyal followers and marched on the city of Uruk, a pivotal moment that would shape his legacy. According to historical inscriptions, Sargon's conquest of Uruk was portrayed as a divine mandate, where he proclaimed himself Sargon, king of Akkad, the bailiff of Ishtar, the king of the universe, the anointed one of the kings of the land. In a dramatic battle, Sargon defeated Uruk's defenders, captured 50 governors, and laid waste to the city's fortress, symbolically toppling the established order. His victory over Lugalzagasi of Ur solidified his ascendancy, marking the beginning of the Akkadian Empire. This pivotal event reshaped the political landscape of Mesopotamia, establishing Sargon as a formidable ruler and setting a precedent for future empires in the region. While the specifics of Sargon's early life and the foundation of Akkad remain shrouded in myth and legend, his achievements in centralizing power, military innovation, and administrative reform left an indelible mark on ancient history. His reign marked a transition from decentralized city-states to centralized rule under a powerful monarch, setting the stage for centuries of imperial ambition and cultural exchange across Mesopotamia. Thus, Sargon of Akkad emerges not only as a conqueror and administrator, but also as a transformative figure whose legacy continues to intrigue and inspire exploration into the origins of civilization in the ancient Near East. Taking Lugalzagasi to the gates of Enlil, the sacred city of Nippur, was not merely a conquest but a symbolic triumph for Sargon, signaling the collapse of his rival's power and Sargon's favor in the eyes of the gods. While historical records provide less detail about Lugalzagasi's ultimate fate, Sargon's own reign and governmental actions are comparatively well documented for his time. Initially, Sargon's rapid expansion across Mesopotamia seemed effortless in historical accounts. However, maintaining control over his vast empire, particularly over the proud city-states of Sumer, proved challenging. Many of these cities revolted against Sargon's rule, testing the mettle of his newly formed professional army. Fiercely loyal to him, through a blend of coercion, military strength, and occasional diplomacy, Sargon quelled each uprising, solidifying his dominance over both Akkad and Sumer within a few decades. By approximately 2334 BC, Sargon's conquests marked the end of Sumer's early dynastic period and the onset of the Akkadian era. Sargon's influence was so profound that for the subsequent 2 millennia, Babylonian kings proudly claimed the title, King of Akkad, underscoring Sargon's legacy as the archetype of empire and kingship. Lugalzagasi, once a dominant force, faded into obscurity in the annals of history. When European archaeologists began exploring Mesopotamia in the early 19th century, driven by a quest to unearth the origins of their own civilizations, they initially knew little beyond biblical narratives and the remnants of ancient mud brick cities, long abandoned. Over decades of painstaking excavation, starting with notable discoveries like the Assyrian capital Nineveh, archaeologists meticulously revealed layers of history dating back to the Iron Age, offering profound insights into the Assyrian Empire of the first millennium BC. Beneath these more recent layers lay even older foundations, spanning back to the ancient civilizations of Sumer and Akkad. These discoveries fundamentally reshaped our understanding of Mesopotamia's rich history, illuminating the once mysterious origins of complex societies and their profound influence on subsequent cultures. In 1931, archaeologists unearthed a remarkable discovery at Nineveh, shedding light on the Akkadian era that preceded Assyrian dominance by 1,500 years. This find, nestled within Akkadian layers of the ancient city, included a prominent artifact, a magnificent bronze head, believed to be part of an imposing statue of an Akkadian king. Despite being defaced in antiquity, today, the head stands as a masterpiece of ancient artistry, offering a rare glimpse into Akkadian aesthetics. Scholars speculate it represents either Sargon of Akkad or his grandson, Naram-Sin. though concrete details about its origin remain elusive. What distinguishes this bronze head is its departure from traditional depictions of rulers prevalent in earlier Sumerian art. Unlike the typical portrayal of Sumerian kings as bald with benevolent expressions, the statue features elaborate hair, a stylistic shift that may reflect a new Akkadian aesthetic, or perhaps a royal wig. Its creation was groundbreaking, as realistic human representations were exceedingly rare during that period, making this artifact truly unprecedented. Beyond its artistic significance, the bronze head served a profound symbolic purpose in Akkadian society. Crafted with precision and expertise, it not only asserted the king's authority but also embodied his essence. For the people who beheld it, the statue functioned as a tangible conduit of the king's presence, effectively standing in for him during his absence. This enduring representation underscores the enduring power and influence of the Akkadian rulers long after their reigns ended. The statue's resilience is evidenced by its survival and subsequent defacement during the tumultuous events of Nineveh's sack in the 7th century BC, more than a millennium after the Akkadian period. This longevity highlights the enduring legacy of Akkadian kingship and its lasting impact on Mesopotamian history. Sargon of Akkad, in particular, revolutionized governance in Sumer. Prior to his rule, the established order was dominated by powerful priesthoods and noble families who controlled every facet of society, particularly within city-states. Sargon decisively broke their influence, replacing them with Akkadian governors handpicked for their loyalty to him alone. These governors, now in charge of the once dominant estates, retained a substantial share of agricultural produce and revenue, thereby consolidating wealth and power within the Akkadian regime. This reorganization not only redistributed economic resources, but also cemented loyalty among the new ruling elite. By granting them a vested interest in the empire's prosperity, Sargon ensured their unwavering commitment to his vision and governance. This shift marked a pivotal moment in Mesopotamian history, where centralized rule and administrative efficiency underpinned the Akkadian Empire's success and longevity. In essence, the discovery of the bronze head at Nineveh not only illuminates the artistic achievements of the Akkadian era, but also underscores the transformative impact of Sargon's rule on ancient Mesopotamian society. It serves as a testament to the enduring legacy of Akkadian kingship and their innovative approach to governance, setting a precedent that would shape the course of empire building for generations to come. The redistribution of fertile lands under Sargon's rule had profound implications for Mesopotamian society, fundamentally altering the balance of power. Previously, the mainstay of wealth and influence had rested with the religious and ruling elite, who derived their income primarily from temple estates. However, with Sargon's ascent, these estates were systematically transferred into the hands of loyal Akkadian governors, thereby diminishing the traditional sources of power for the former establishment. While compensation was often provided, the acquisition of these estates was coercive, and resistance to the government's offers likely incurred severe consequences. This transition not only redefined economic dynamics, but also consolidated political control under Sargon's centralized authority. Moreover, key religious institutions across major cities were entrusted to Sargon's loyalists, further intertwining political power with religious authority. For instance, Sargon appointed his daughter, later known as Anna, to oversee the prestigious temple complex dedicated to the moon god Nana in Ur. This strategic placement not only secured control over significant religious endowments, but also bolstered the perception of Sargon's rule as divinely sanctioned. Having solidified his grip over Sumer, Sargon extended his ambitions beyond local borders, claiming conquests that purportedly stretched from Elam in modern-day southwestern Iran to the shores of the eastern Mediterranean. These territories encompassed lucrative trade routes, granting Sargon direct control over invaluable economic resources and facilitating access to distant lands inhabited by diverse populations speaking various languages and adhering to different religious beliefs. While many of these conquests outside Sumer are recounted only through Akkadian records, One notable exception is Ebla, unearthed in the 1960s by Italian archaeologists. Ebla's extensive cuneiform archives and its archaeological destruction later corroborate Akkadian claims. References within Elbate records suggest Sargon's influence, possibly identifying him as the king of Kish or the father of its ruling monarch, establishing familial ties to secure control over this pivotal city. Ebla, once a thriving hub crucial to the urbanization of Syria during the 3rd millennium BC, transitioned under Akkadian rule into a provincial center marked by its ancient cities, religious institutions, and sophisticated irrigation networks. This transformation underscored Sargon's strategic vision of consolidating power within the Akkadian heartland, shifting the cultural and administrative center of Mesopotamia northward to Akkad. To solidify his rule and project authority, Sargon established a grand capital on the Euphrates River, where he constructed opulent palaces for himself and his family. Central to his political strategy was the erection of temples dedicated to his patron deities, notably honoring the goddess Ishtar. These monumental structures not only symbolized Sargon's divine favor, but also served as centers of political and religious authority, legitimizing his imperial ambitions and reinforcing the Akkadian legacy as the pinnacle of Mesopotamian civilization. In essence, Sargon's reorganization of land ownership, strategic appointments within religious institutions, and ambitious military campaigns reshaped Mesopotamian society, establishing Akkad as a dominant political and cultural force for centuries to come. His legacy as a visionary ruler and empire builder laid the foundation for subsequent civilizations, marking a transformative era in ancient Near Eastern history. Establishing his rule from the newly fortified city of Akkad, Sargon embarked on the monumental task of governing his vast empire, employing sophisticated political strategies that would resonate through centuries of imperial governance. Sargon pioneered techniques that included unprecedented propaganda. Notably, he meticulously documented the exact number of enemies killed in battle, a bold assertion of his military prowess, and an early example of state-controlled information aimed at instilling fear and reverence among his subjects. Central to Sargon's consolidation of power was the adoption of Akkadian as the official language for all administrative purposes across his diverse realm. This linguistic policy aimed to unify the empire, which encompassed regions where various languages, including Sumerian, Elamite, and Western Semitic dialects, were spoken, while Sumerian continued to be taught in scribal schools and used in cultural contexts. The promotion of Akkadian and the resettlement of Akkadian-speaking populations gradually supplanted Sumerian as the lingua franca of Mesopotamia for millennia to come. Akkad, strategically positioned as both the political capital and commercial hub of the empire, thrived under Sargon's rule. Its ports welcomed ships laden with goods from as far as Dilmun modern Bahrain and Magan modern Oman, while caravans traversed vast distances from Anatolia, Elam, Arabia, and the Levant, facilitating a flourishing trade network. This interconnectedness not only enriched Akkadian merchants, but also expanded the horizons of Sumerian cities, granting them direct access to international trade routes that spanned from the Mediterranean to the Indus Valley. By 2500 BC, Mesopotamia's global trade system was thriving, facilitated by independent traders who traversed extensive routes, passing goods from one region to another. The Akkadians, akin to the later Romans, exerted substantial control over this trade network, unlike their predecessors who had struggled to dominate regions like Elam. Evidence from archaeological sites, such as Naram-Sin, indicates Akkadian traders engaged in commerce with distant civilizations, exchanging goods and ideas at bustling markets where artifacts bearing Akkadian seals have been unearthed. This exchange extended Akkad's influence into regions like eastern Iran, where cities such as Naram-Sin flourished as centers of commerce and cultural exchange. Here, Akkadian merchants traded with counterparts from the Indus Valley civilization, exchanging prized commodities such as chlorite vessels and establishing early connections that facilitated the spread of goods and technologies across Eurasia. This vibrant trade also contributed to the spread of innovations, including the early domestication of horses in the Middle East, sourced from regions as distant as the Eurasian steppes. The prosperity of Akkad was fueled by a diverse array of commodities flowing into its markets, from cedar wood from Lebanon to diorite from Dilmun, moon grain from Sumer, tin from the mountains of Elam, and precious stones like lapis lazuli and chlorite from Afghanistan and the Indus Valley. This economic dynamism underpinned Akkad's ascendancy as a cultural and economic powerhouse, leaving an enduring legacy in the annals of ancient history as the first empire to unite disparate lands under centralized governance and commercial enterprise. Trade ships laden with goods from lands as distant as Meluha, Magan, and Dilmun docked at Akkad's bustling port, testament to the expansive reach of Sargon's conquests and the flourishing trade that accompanied it. The city of Akkad itself grew immensely wealthy from the taxes levied on its vast empire, becoming a beacon of prosperity and cultural magnificence in the ancient world, though its precise location remains a mystery yet to be uncovered. According to the Sumerian king list, Sargon's reign spanned an impressive 56 years, a period during which his charismatic leadership undoubtedly left an enduring imprint on the societies under his rule. His death in 2279 BC, reportedly from natural causes, marked a pivotal moment for the Akkadian Empire. In the aftermath of his passing, particularly in the Sumerian heartland, rebellions erupted, challenging the stability of the empire and testing the resilience of his successors. Among the artifacts and monuments of the Bronze Age world, few would have matched the grandeur and audacity of a purported statue commissioned by Sargon's second successor. Crafted from pure tin, an exceedingly rare and precious material imported from distant lands, this statue symbolized the divine legitimacy and opulence of the ruling dynasty. While the statue itself has not survived, its construction would have been a marvel of engineering and a statement of wealth and power unparalleled in its time. Sargon's son and successor, Rimush, sought to consolidate his authority by elevating himself to divine status, foreshadowing the deification of his nephew in the subsequent generation. Rimush's decision to commission a statue of pure tin was not merely a display of extravagance, but a calculated move to reinforce his family's divine right to rule and their unrivaled wealth. Despite these efforts, Rimush's reign was soon engulfed in turmoil. Following Sargon's death, internal strife and external threats plunged the empire into chaos. The reasons behind Rimush's ascendancy over his elder brother, Tizkar, in the succession remain unclear. However, historical precedent in Mesopotamia suggests that qualities such as decisiveness and ruthlessness were valued in potential rulers, traits that Rimush evidently possessed and deemed necessary to safeguard the empire's survival amid the turmoil of succession. In the turbulent aftermath of Sargon's death, Rimush's leadership was tested by widespread unrest and challenges to the empire's unity. His ability to navigate these crises would ultimately determine the fate of the Akkadian Empire, marking a critical juncture in the history of Mesopotamia and shaping the legacy of Sargon and his successors for generations to come. However, it is also plausible that due to the absence of a clear primogeniture or succession policy, the strongest simply seized power from his elder brother. For Rimush, like every Akkadian ruler, ascending to the throne meant facing immediate challenges. Upon his accession, most major Sumerian cities, including Ur, Lagash, Uruk, and Umma, rose up in rebellion. Inheriting a formidable standing army from his father, Sargon, Rimush swiftly retaliated. According to his own accounts, Rimush razed the rebellious city's walls, mercilessly slaughtering thousands of Sumerian soldiers and enslaving many survivors. He also expelled thousands of non-combatants of fighting age, subjecting the defeated cities to severe punishments, mass deportations, and forced labor. Archaeological documents unearthed from Umma corroborate these accounts, detailing the grim fate of its inhabitants forced into labor camps under Akkadian rule. Once the rebellions were quelled, Rimush undertook a drastic reorganization of the conquered territories. he confiscated large swaths of land totaling approximately 134,000 hectares from cities like Lagash, Uruk, and Umma, lands that had been fiercely contested for centuries. These lands were then redistributed among the newly established Akkadian landholding class, a group of loyalists and supporters whom his father, Sargon, had promoted just decades earlier. This massive land redistribution was one of the largest recorded in ancient history, fundamentally altering the socio-economic landscape of Mesopotamia. Both Akkadians and Sumerians who aligned themselves with the new regime benefited, cementing a culture of nepotism where advancement was tied to loyalty rather than traditional claims to ancestral lands. This transformation marked a significant departure from the millennia-old institutions of Sumer. The elite and temple priesthoods, who had historically held sway over land and religious authority, were sidelined and often stripped of their ancestral claims. The dismantling of these ancient institutions under Akkadian rule signaled a profound shift in power dynamics, with political loyalty and military prowess now outweighing divine endorsement. Despite Rimush's efforts to consolidate power, rebellions continued to erupt throughout his reign. One notable uprising occurred in the city of Kullab on the Euphrates River, which had previously revolted against Sargon. Under Rimush's rule, the city faced brutal reprisals as Akkadian forces ruthlessly suppressed any resistance. Akkadian texts boast that 12,000 rebel soldiers were killed in the ensuing conflict, with another 5,000 sold into slavery. The city's walls were demolished, symbolizing the harsh consequences of defiance against Akkadian authority. Rimush's reign, characterized by military campaigns, land seizures, and ruthless suppression of dissent, underscored the Akkadian Empire's dominance and its uncompromising approach to governance. His actions laid the foundation for subsequent Akkadian rulers, shaping the empire's trajectory and leaving a legacy of centralized power and imperial control over the diverse peoples and territories of ancient Mesopotamia. Similar accounts have also been provided for campaigns in Elam, an equally ancient region known for its city builders. Alongside detailed inscriptions on various objects, there are mentions of the substantial plunder brought back to Agade, the center of Mesopotamian religion. By the end of his reign, Rimush's ruthless victories over his enemies had clearly inflated his ego, leading him to regard himself less as a mere mortal and more akin to a deity. However, his mortality was soon demonstrated when he fell victim to assassins within his own court. Contrary to typical methods like daggers or poison, Rimush was allegedly strangled with a cylinder seal in a secluded chamber. The surviving texts do not explicitly name the orchestrators of the murder, but given Rimush's brutal rule, he had accumulated numerous enemies. The most plausible scenario points to his elder brother, Manishtushu, who swiftly ascended the throne following Rimush's demise. Manishtushu inherited the conflicts and wars initiated by his brother around 4,260 years ago, marking the transition of power in the Akkadian Empire. During Manishtushu's reign, around 4,260 years ago, 964 men gathered for a lavish feast in the land of Akkad. The feast featured grand servings of mutton and pork roasted on spits, accompanied by bread, olives, vegetables, and copious amounts of beer. However, tensions simmered beneath the surface. 49 observers loomed ominously, potentially ready to intervene in the proceedings. It is likely that these observers were among those slated to receive land in exchange for relinquishing their ancestral rights, as part of the ongoing land reforms under the new elite of Akkad. This scene, documented on cuneiform tablets during the reign of the third Akkadian king, Manishtushu, was a familiar one, continuing the trend set by his predecessors. Like Sargon and Rimush before him, Manishtushu pursued policies that expanded his personal household at the expense of established local institutions. This administrative overhaul is substantiated by archaeological evidence from extensive centers such as Tel Brak and Tel Lilan, which were evidently established to oversee and implement these sweeping reforms. Armies of bureaucrats meticulously recorded these changes, reflecting the administrative sophistication of the Akkadian Empire during this period. Compared to the turbulent reign of Rimush, Manishtushu's rule appears to have been more stable. It is possible that his preference for maintaining peace within the empire, which was perpetually beset by internal strife, garnered favor among the Akkadian courtiers. This stability, however, did not imply an end to challenges, as the Akkadian Empire continued to grapple with both external threats and internal pressures throughout Manishtushu's reign. It's intriguing to consider whether Manishtushu's indignation at being passed over for rule in favor of his younger brother, Rimush, contributed to the tensions that eventually led to Rimush's downfall. There's a possibility that Manishtushu and his court faction clandestinely orchestrated the removal of Rimush from power, potentially sparking an unrecorded civil conflict between the two brothers, a chapter lost to history. Manishtushu, upon assuming power, attributed his ascension to Enlil's will, acting to quell existing conflicts by employing stringent measures against rebellious elements rather than initiating new wars. Quietly resolving his brother's conflicts, Manishtushu shifted focus towards enhancing commerce and forging trade routes that stretched as far as Egypt. Archaeological findings suggest that during this era, few regions remained untouched by Akkadian hegemony, as evidenced by the empire's vast territorial expanse from Anatolia's borders to the deserts of Iran, an extraordinary achievement for its time. Numerous artifacts unearthed across the Middle East from this period attest to the empire's dominance, with one standout relic exemplifying the profound influence of its earliest emperors, the obelisk of Manishtushu, standing at 1.4 meters tall. Crafted from inscribed black diorite, this legal record details the allocation of lands, highlighting the king's significant administrative reforms. Notably, the stone itself was transported from Magan, located across the Persian Gulf in present-day Oman, underscoring the Akkadian Empire's extensive reach and logistical capabilities. Yet, echoing his brother's fate, Manishtushu met his end in 2255 BC, allegedly assassinated, leaving his son poised to inherit the throne amidst ongoing military campaigns. Thus began the reign of one of the empire's greatest rulers, Naram-Sin, heralding a new era marked by unparalleled advancements in art, society, and commerce. This period coincided with the Axial Age, a time of paradigm shifts in philosophical thought across the ancient world, from Confucius to the budding philosophers of Greece. However, in Mesopotamia, where kings maintained unyielding authority, a continuous cultural lineage extended back to the dawn of civilization's earliest cities. Fast forward to 550 BC, nearly 2 millennia after the Akkadian zenith, Babylon under the Neo-Babylonian Empire emerged as the epitome of power and grandeur. Its capital, Babylon, housed over 200,000 inhabitants amidst magnificent hanging gardens and ziggurats, an unparalleled testament to human ingenuity. It was in this era that the first archaeological excavations in history were undertaken, led by King Nabonidus, aimed at uncovering the foundation deposits of temples dedicated to the sun god, Shamash, and the warrior goddess, Ishtar, alongside Naram-Sin's sanctuary to the moon god Inherent. Despite his miscalculations in dating artifacts, Nabonidus sought to revive these ancient sites, underscoring Naram-Sin's enduring legacy even centuries after his reign. The question remains, why Naram-Sin, and not his father or uncle, leaves such an indelible mark on history? Naram-Sin, like his predecessor Sargon, was celebrated as the archetype of a warrior king. His reign marked the pinnacle of Akkadian power, characterized by monumental architecture and material wealth, a period known in art history as the Classical Akkadian era, distinguishing it from earlier and later periods. Yet, Naram-Sin also emerged as one of Mesopotamia's most controversial rulers, with tales that portrayed him in a harsh light. His reign began amidst turmoil, facing the largest revolt yet seen against the new Akkadian order. The conflict threatened to dismantle the empire in its infancy. According to Naram-Sin's own inscriptions, the uprising, known as the Great Revolt, was led by cities like Kish and Uruk, among others across Sumer and beyond into Elam and the western regions. It took a series of 9 battles, but ultimately, Naram-Sin's forces triumphed, restoring order through what became standard Akkadian military doctrine. In the brutal aftermath of their defeat, the rebellious cities suffered greatly. At Kish, the Euphrates River ran red with the blood of defenders, with thousands slain defending their walls before the city fell, and was subsequently flooded by Naram-Sin's decree. Similarly, Uruk and its coalition faced severe retribution, with their ancient walls torn down and their cities flooded, a harsh message from Naram-Sin that dissent within the empire would be met with swift and ruthless punishment. Once stability was re-established within the empire, Naram-Sin turned his attention to governance and expansion. Over his 36-year reign, he expanded the Akkadian Empire's influence to its zenith, stretching from the Marhashi kingdom in central Iran to the shores of the Mediterranean, possibly even reaching Cyprus. His victories, including those immortalized on the famous victory stele of Naram-Sin, depicted him as a conqueror defeating the peoples of the Zagros Mountains, symbolically trampling over their fallen warriors. Naram-Sin's military successes extended to potentially destroying the ancient city of Ebla, further solidifying his dominance over the empire. Amidst his military exploits, he also boasted of his hunting prowess, initiating a tradition that would endure for millennia. However, like his predecessors, Naram-Sin struggled to integrate traditional Mesopotamian governance structures with the new Akkadian order. His reign stands as the most magnificent era in Akkadian history, both militarily and economically, remembered primarily through records of his foreign campaigns and the grand monuments he commissioned, such as the Victory Stele. Naram-Sin left a legacy as a formidable warrior king who consolidated and expanded the Akkadian Empire to unprecedented heights. However, Naram-Sin was not only a formidable warrior, but also a prolific builder. Among his many projects, he undertook the complete renovation of ancient Mesopotamia's most renowned and sacred temple, the Iena at Nippur, dedicated to the god Enlil. This endeavor was to be the crowning achievement of his reign, a monumental feat of architecture and religious devotion. Once completed, it would have been a sight to behold, one of the grandest structures ever constructed. Archaeological documents unearthed from Nippur provide vivid details of the construction activities, revealing the extensive use of precious metals and the vast workforce involved. Overseen by Crown Prince Shar Kali Shari, these records mention hundreds of laborers, including 77 specialized woodworkers, 86 goldsmiths, 10 sculptors, 54 carpenters, and various other skilled artisans brought from across the empire to contribute to this monumental project. By Naram-Sin's time, few individuals had lived through a time before the Akkadian rule, and he sought to dominate religious life by elevating his status beyond mortal realms. Seeing predecessors who were deified only after their deaths, Naram-Sin took a different approach, aiming to establish a total monopoly over religion. He appointed a number of his daughters as priestesses in various temples across Sumer, thus forging intimate connections between his royal lineage and the religious institutions. Naram-Sin not only revered other gods and goddesses, but also proclaimed himself divine. Inscriptions found on monuments across temples illustrate his belief and power, stating, Naram-Sin, the mighty king of Akkad, when the 4 quarters of the earth attacked him together through the love of Ishtar, was victorious in 9 battles in a single year, and captured the kings who rose against him. Because he defended his city in crisis, the people asked that he be worshipped as a deity in numerous cities, including Agade with Ishtar, Nippur with Enlil, Tuli with Dagon, Kish with Ninjursu, Gerudo with Enki, Ur with Sin, Larsa with Shamash, and Uruk with Inanna. However, unlike Sargon, Naram-Sin's self-deification and perceived vanity made him unpopular in subsequent generations. Later epic literature portrayed him in a negative light, citing these traits among others as reasons for his downfall. The Curse of Agade, a literary work of later authors, blamed Naram-Sin for the empire's troubles, although historical records suggest otherwise. After a reign of 36 years, Naram-Sin died not in battle or by assassination, but reportedly from natural causes associated with old age. His passing marked a transition in the empire. In 20 to 17 BC, Shah-Shari ascended the throne, inheriting an empire at its peak of size and prosperity. However, within just 25 years, the Akkadian Empire dwindled to a mere remnant around Akkad, surrounded by hostile enemies. Unfortunately, unlike his predecessors, there are scant inscriptions from Shah-Shari's reign, leaving much of his legacy shrouded in mystery. It's challenging to piece together a clear picture of Mesopotamia during this era. We know there was a fierce struggle against Akkadian and Amorite invaders gathering on the outskirts of the empire. Early in his reign, the southern regions finally managed to break free from Akkadian rule. Though details are scarce, Akkadian sources mention several revolts, yet the outcomes of these events are often obscured by Akkadian propaganda. Following Ali-Shari's death, a series of short-lived kings ruled in Akkad. Their connection to Sargon's Akkadian dynasty remains unclear, but the last of these rulers, Shu-Doral, according to later texts and traditions, met his end when people from the Zagros mountains breached Akkad's walls and set the city ablaze. However, the ruins of Akkad have not been definitively identified, leaving this part of the story unconfirmed by archaeological evidence. Nevertheless, a city as prominent as Akkad would likely have faced its end through siege in recent centuries. In recent scholarship, a new theory has emerged attributing the empire's downfall to unprecedented drought. Scientific data suggests that a severe drought struck the northern regions around Akkad, an already marginal environment even during more favorable times. This prolonged drought, possibly lasting years or even decades, led to increased desertification and significantly reduced the flow of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. As a result, less arable land could be irrigated, leading to widespread famine, economic collapse, and social unrest among the populace. Under such dire conditions, maintaining cohesion within such a vast empire would have been extraordinarily challenging for any ruler. Moreover, these environmental pressures may have provided an opportunity and motivation for groups like the Akkadians to raid Akkadian lands and eventually reach the heart of Akkad itself. According to later texts, they conquered and ruled as the new lords of Mesopotamia for over a century. However, this is not the end of the story, at least not according to the popular Sumerian and Akkadian literature that emerged a century or two later. After some semblance of order was restored by the final Sumerian dynasty, which established its own successor empire after the Akkadians, legends about Sargon became particularly prominent. These legends, compiled into various mini-epics, were recited by poets and bards as they traveled between cities, recounting tales of Sargon's life and conquests. Interestingly, there are also several literary works that delve into the life of Naram-Sin, but unlike Sargon's tales of valor, these tend to be cautionary rather than celebratory. One of the most famous of these works is The Curse of Akkad, a fictional narrative loosely based on historical events. According to this tale, the downfall of Naram-Sin and the magnificent city of Akkad was attributed to Enlil, the chief deity of the Sumerian pantheon, withdrawing his favor from the city for reasons unknown to Naram-Sin. Despite the king's efforts to seek signs or omens to regain divine favor, his appeals were in vain. Frustrated and angered after 7 years, Naram-Sin orders the destruction of Enlil's holy sanctuary in the city of Nippur. In retaliation, Enlil sends the Akkadian mountain people and famine to ravage Akkad and its people. The overarching moral of the tale warns against questioning the gods, especially with such haste and disrespect. Archaeological findings and texts from Naram-Sin's reign often contradict many aspects of the Curse of Akkad. However, the historical events that potentially led to the city's decline, such as Akkadian attacks and widespread famine, do seem to have some basis in reality, likely occurring towards the end of Naram-Sin's reign, and possibly misinterpreted or embellished by later storytellers. In reality, Naram-Sin was depicted as a devout ruler who, contrary to the tale's portrayal, oversaw the renovation of Enlil's sanctuary. making it more grandiose than ever before. Despite the divergent portrayals in later literature, both Sargon and Naram-Sin remained enduring figures in Mesopotamian history, remembered for centuries. Their accomplishments and stories served as inspiration for many subsequent kings who sought to establish their own great empires. The Akkadian rulers fundamentally reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the Near Eastern world, leaving an indelible mark for generations to come. The era of small city-states, where citizens waged wars over farmland and their lives centered around their patron deities, was left behind by the rise of the Akkadian Empire. Under Sargon and his descendants, these cities became part of a vast, dynamic political entity unlike anything previously seen. This transformation laid the groundwork for future empires. Sargon and his successors opened a new world for the people of the ancient Near East, one sustained not just by military power, but through the promotion of trade and the exchange of ideas with many contemporary civilizations. Moreover, the Akkadian model of administration and centralized government would inspire future empires in the Near East for at least 2 millennia after the fall of Akkad. The Akkadians also left a lasting legacy by giving the region its language, Akkadian, which served as the lingua franca of the Near East until it was eventually replaced by Aramaic, nearly 1,500 years later. Thank you for following our video. Remember to leave a like, share, and subscribe to our channel.